Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, depending on where you're calling in from. My name's Tina. As you can see, I'm joined here with some of my colleagues. Nicole as our Senior Manager Recruitment. Mary is our Associate Director, MBA. She will be the speaker today. And I'm also joined by a few other colleagues, as you can see, if you can give a wave, and my colleagues Sophie, Laura, and Lynn. Thanks for supporting this. And I would just quickly mention that, so about today's agenda, I'll pass the floor to Mary to kick off this session. And if you have any questions, just some Zoom housekeeping information. If you have any questions, you can use the chat box to type in your questions. We'll monitor from there. Or when Mary finishes her presentation, you can put your hands up. We can call your name to ask any questions. During the presentation time, we kindly ask you to mute yourself, but you'll have time to ask the questions after the presentation. So without further ado, I'll pass the floor to Mary to start the session.
Thank you so much, Tina. Thanks, everybody, for being here. Appreciate you wanting to take the time and learn more about the Sauder MBA and a little bit of how it fits into the Canadian marketplace and some of the roles that the market is demanding. So it's a good time to think about an MBA as you shape your career and your future. With that, I want to acknowledge that UBC Point Grey campus is situated on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Musqueam people. We'd also like to acknowledge that you are joining us today from many places near and far, and so we acknowledge those lands and the owners and caretakers as well. So with that, I will carry on. Tina has actually already done a little bit of the housekeeping. So just as you can see things around the microphone, we'll have an opportunity to raise your hand. And if possible, keep your cameras on so people can see you. So we will likely be recording this. I will leave that to the background. So if you hear a recording, just know that that's happening. So with that, I think that an outline is in store. I'm going to talk a little bit about who the Business Career Center is. We are an integral part of the Sauder School of Business and an MBA journey. I mentioned earlier a little bit about the Canadian job market, both BC and Toronto, because those are the two places that primarily our students tend to land when they're looking at their summer internships and full-time job opportunities. The dominance of the SME market, so that is the small mid-sized enterprise market. What does that look like here? CRSs, there's a lot of acronyms. CRSs is a term that we use for company recruiting sessions. So when companies want to come on campus and build their brand and meet students, and students get to chat to them, and then also introduce our business development team who actually liaises with the business market. Going to pull back the veil on some of our career outcomes, early outcomes from the 23 class that just finished this year, and a little bit about our internships through the summer. And of course, there'll be time for your questions. So hopefully that aligns with your expectations. So here's our team. Big team that works with the MBAs. You can see there are a number of people here on our team, from career strategists who work with students, creating one-on-one relationships. We have support. We also have a very strong leadership team here with Lane McDonald and Martina Valavikova. And they're obviously working on behalf of all the students with Sauder. But this is a team that's really dedicated as well to meeting the needs of the MBA, meeting you where you are when you're in an MBA program. So with that, what does the Career Center do? We work with all Sauder students. It's not exclusive to grad students. We work with the undergrads as well. It is the only faculty at UBC that has its own dedicated career center. Our services are here to help you gain some clarity, to look forward, to understand what matters to you, what are your values, what's important as you make these this sort of investment in your career and your future. So how we do that? A couple of different ways. You see career coaching and advising. I mentioned already, you build relationships with those career strategists one-on-one. You get unlimited opportunity to connect with them and work with those individuals. Career development resources. So we do a lot of programming. We have a number of resources that we exclusively have designed within the Sauder family. Job and experiential learning opportunities. So this is the internship, likely, and or entrepreneurial project in the full-time MBA program. It might be volunteering. It might be through opportunities to get involved in the executive team within the MBA. You also have opportunities to interact clearly with employers, alumni events, and then finally, you have skill development workshops. And the skill development workshops are important to highlight because clearly those are the things that are going to help you with, what are the things that are different maybe from where I've come from and the way I've been doing my job search when I got after my undergrad. So lots to learn there. And what guides us is our unique career journey. So if you see the interesting infographic on our left, this is the framework that we use to help navigate the student experience. I think each one of these is equally important. You can see knowing yourself really guides all of the other quadrants. You've got know yourself in the middle. And I made mention to knowing your values, knowing what's important to you, knowing what you're looking for, your strengths, your motivators. Things change, over your life cycle. So what is it that you want to think about now? Once you've moved from there, it's like, tell your story. So, what do my tools look like? What does a resume look like for this local market? Interviewing skills, being able to network and have conversations, meaningful conversations. Exploring career opportunities. What does this market look like? What are some of the opportunities, the types of companies, the types of opportunities functionally that might align well with me? And then finally, that learning through experience, which I mentioned, could be volunteering. It could be doing an internship. It might be working on your own business. It might be an entrepreneurial partnership that you do with someone in one of your classes. And as well, what's important is we have sort of the three, I would say, anchors: being committed, being proactive, and being resilient. And by that, we mean it's your personal responsibility. It's your journey. And we're here to help you. We're here to walk side by side with you. But it's ultimately your journey to craft and your journey to manage. And we're there to be as committed as you are. Being proactive means that the Career Center is here to help you, but you're also going to, own that journey yourself. What are some things that you can be doing outside of what might be within the Sauder walls? What are some other places that you can be tapped into? What are some organizations you might want to be aligned with? Where can you go to learn and grow and connect? And likewise, be resilient. I think an MBA is always going to build resiliency on those days you have setbacks. How do you come back from that? How do you recalibrate? How do you think twice about what that learning was like? It builds confidence. So I think this is a really good sort of snapshot of how our Career Center walks in line with the academic journey of an MBA. So I'll shift now really to the market. And so if we think a little bit about, why is this a good time to do an MBA in Canada? And the numbers really speak for themselves. The Canadian market, though for some of you coming from more populated countries, our population might look relatively small. There is a lot of growth, a lot of opportunity, and that's only growing. As you look at the population growth, this is through census data, you can see population growth. The two major centers would be Ontario and British Columbia, which I mentioned earlier are sort of the two centers where we see more of our students go to. But we also see students going to other provinces. And so, Alberta has had a number of individuals from our classes over the years going to both Edmonton and Calgary. And so it's not exclusive. If you've got, plans to come to British Columbia to do a degree, but you'd prefer to move elsewhere, we've got alumni connections to help you with that, and clearly resources to help you tap what that market looks like for you. And it's clearly not limited to a national market. My focus in this presentation is to look nationally, just because that tends to be where most of our students stay. is somewhere in Canada. But we again have students who go internationally as well. With that, I think what's sort of telling about why an MBA is timely at this point is the World Economic Forum has looked at sort of a job report, key roles, key areas for reskilling for opportunities in Canada. So when you think of big data, analytical thinking, critical thinking, leadership, resilience, I just talked about that. These are all areas of growth, and these are all areas that the employer market is interested in. And all of these are areas that will be touched on in a full-time MBA program, no doubt. You can also see where sort of the work lands. So when you think of, business development professionals, project managers, people who've worked in general operations management, there's lots of opportunity here. So I think it's a good news story when we look at, what the rest of the world is doing and how Canada lines up in terms of growth opportunities here. I'm going to look more specifically at British Columbia and what this growth looks like sort of in our local market. I think what is fascinating is 63% will be replacement. So as we think of an aging population, we think of the baby boomers moving out of the market. There's clearly huge opportunity there for professionals. And you have a 37% growth in expansion, which is newly created jobs. So through economic growth, you'll find that 37% growth in opportunities as well. So that's a lot of job opportunities over these next, 9 years now. So I think it is a good news story when you think about, some might say the economy is a bit soft at the moment, but when you look at the longer runway, clearly there's lots of good news here. How will British Columbia fill that replacement and expansion is they'll need to look at young people starting careers. They'll need to look at immigrants. They'll need to consider migrants, people moving from other provinces. That's sort of been something that's happened traditionally in Canada, where people have moved from Ontario to BC, BC to Ontario, Alberta. There's lots of migration. And then when you think of supply, sort of addressed through increased labor force participation and innovation. So again, sort of just, I think this is this good news story talking about this market and the opportunities for MBA grads going out into the Canadian market at this point in time. What does BC look like? I think a lot of people understand sort of Vancouver, but I think it's important to highlight there's other places in British Columbia. If you look at the different regions, different areas that have been driven by different industries. If you look at the Thompson Okanagan, agriculture is one of the biggest industries that are driving that, and specifically wineries. So again, it's not just the lower mainland and the greater Vancouver regional area. We've seen a number of students go to Vancouver Island. Vancouver Island and the coast of Victoria is where our provincial government sits. So we've had a number of students work with ministries, worked in healthcare with Island Health and Interior Health as well. So again, not limiting yourself to just the Vancouver market, but thinking about British Columbia as a whole. And again, I mentioned healthcare just because it does pop up as one of the areas that is got some of the biggest demand for jobs. Healthcare, social assistance, you can see a huge growth there in terms of expansion and replacement. Professional, scientific, and technical services. So again, really good news story for those of you who may have an engineering background, who may have a business background, project management backgrounds. Construction continues to be a growth area. Educational services, accommodation and food services through tourism and hospitality, traditionally one of our largest industries in Vancouver and Victoria. And outside in other parts of British Columbia. So again, lots of good news here looking at the different industries that have growth opportunities. So, sometimes people looking at it at MBA are, I want to work just in banking, or I'm thinking about consulting. But you can see there's lots of different places where people can go. And it's around uncovering those opportunities that fit with you. And I think that's where and why this is a really great time to be thinking about upskilling and devoting some time to your career to open these opportunities up. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the Toronto market as well. Toronto clearly is a market where a number of our students have settled after the program and or done their summer internships in the Toronto market. Largest city in Canada, capital of Ontario, very multicultural, has a really strong arts community and incredibly diverse. One of the most diverse cities in the world. So a city definitely to consider. You mentioned some of those people who might be interested in the finance sector. This might be a market for you to get some experience, to start your post-MBA career and potentially come back to British Columbia thereafter. So just wanted to highlight that sort of these are the two centers where we see most of our students land, either through internship and or through a permanent jobs opportunity at the end of the program. So in the outline, I did refer to the SME market, so the small, mid-size enterprise market. You can see some of the definitions there around the size of organizations. What we do know about the Canadian market is that the large organizations are sort of the smaller number there. Small business accounts for 98% of all businesses in Canada. So it's not to say there aren't the large organizations, but also you'd be, I think, forfeiting an opportunity to look at those smaller companies and mid-sized companies as a really awesome place to get started. We were talking recently, one of my colleagues and I, to a senior product manager at Google. And we were like, okay, lots of our students want to work for a lot of these, the big name firms. And their recommendation was get a PM role, get a product management role in a small firm. Getting that experience in an SME will allow you to have credibility and build that experience that a Google and SAP and IBM, one of these larger organizations, then would be clearly more interested in you. So I think that's important sort of lessons to think about the value and how the value of really small companies give you more breadth and depth in the roles. So you learn quickly and you get to apply MBA skills quickly. So those are things that I think sort of make, sort of tell the tale. Unlike a lot of the big organizations that have very cyclical cycles for hiring, they are, very strong in understanding their model for, I am going to hire 15 interns for the summer of 24. I know exactly what I want to do. With the smaller mid-sized firms, they may not have that number in mind. There is definitely more of a just-in-time hiring market. So the hiring market is real. It's there. It's just not something that's as predictable as what you might see with the larger organizations. And so I think that's important to highlight here is that, learning about some of these organizations and attending some, company information sessions or going to sort of virtual sessions to learn about companies, it's not just about the big names. And I think when you open that gate wider, you find many, many more opportunities that might be more customized and more aligned with what suits you. When it comes to learning about these organizations, and I mentioned that there's a big team in the BCC. One of those teams is our business development team. So their role is very much intricate to working with our employers. What does the employer market need? Who's hiring, who's not? And so here's a really quick snapshot of how large this team is that works again with Sauder students in all sorts of industries. And what they do is they liaise with bringing in employers to do company recruiting sessions, career fairs, help them with postings if they want to post a job, help with potentially wanting to be involved in hackathons and or they want to hire a group of students to work on a project for them. And so our business development team works sort of hand in hand with our career coaches and our career strategists to understand what are our students wanting, and then they can talk to the market and the market can tell them what they're wanting. So we have a really great communication system there that allows both sides to understand our needs. and help build the community for the future for our students. One of the things that they are very much involved in is bringing companies onto campus in what we call company recruiting sessions. So these sessions are an excellent opportunity for people to learn about these organizations, to learn more about, what are their hiring needs, where are they based, how, what are some of their verticals that they might not know. It gives students a chance to talk to somebody, potentially ask questions of hiring representatives, understand what qualifications, what would be a wish list for somebody in such a role. Understand, is this actually a company that lines up for me? Is this a company that I find valuable? Do they value me? Do their values align with what I want? Can I see myself working there? So these types of sessions run primarily in the fall and early new year. And it aligns with when students are doing a lot of that exploration. So again, this is just one opportunity, one piece of the career management that happens while in the program, sort of a complement to you going to your classes and learning your academic skills. It's learning about who are some of these industry players, who are some of the organizations that I might not have heard about who may be coming on campus. I have mentioned that a lot of them are the larger firms that will do this, that they have these very predictable runways on who they will hire, how many they will hire in any given year. Some of the smaller firms don't have the same resources to be able to do these types of sessions. So how do I connect with them? How do I meet those people? And a lot of that has to do with getting involved in local organizations, understanding some of the associations that might align for you. If it is a product manager role that you're interested in or you're gunning for, where can I learn more about the PM space? And we have Product Camp, we have Product BC, and there's a number of associations where you can meet those people at these types of events. So though they're not run by Sauder, there's a lot of Sauder people working in these and aligned with these organizations. So you have to hunt a little bit differently. It doesn't actually come out to the school and do these recruiting sessions, but there's definitely a community there to get involved in when they are the smaller mid-sized firms. As an example of some of the large firms that have done company information sessions and company recruiting sessions this fall, we're in the middle of it, so it's happening as we speak. So these firms have all been on campus. So it gives you a bit of a flavor there to understand, again, who comes on campus. There's obviously some of the big finance players, the consulting firms, large CPG, consumer packaged goods companies would be some of those that would come out to campus on a pretty regular basis. When we talk about the summer and for the MBA, the majority of our students look at doing an internship. And the internship, as I mentioned, allows students to get very practical, applied experience. And you can see this is just the summer that just finished, summer of 24. The monthly average salary was about $4,000. The range from $2,000 to $12,900. I think everyone goes, wow, $12,900, that's amazing. And it is, it's a big salary. It's an anomaly. And it's because individuals have been able to get that higher end of that, clearly than the average, based on having previous connections with organizations and having professional experience in a certain domain that might be more valuable in the market. So that speaks to the range, but I think we'd be remiss if we didn't show you the range and show what the average is for a lot of our students working in an internship. 70% of our internships this past summer were facilitated through the school. So that might be a posting, but it might be that, student met somebody at one of our events. They met an employer or hiring manager through one of the company recruiting sessions. It might be through applying for one of the postings that we post for students for that summer. But I want everyone to understand that sort of school facilitated is just sort of one way of making those opportunities happen. And the other is student facilitated. So using your student's own self-marketing endeavors. And those roles often are more specialized based on your own experience because you're crafting that with employers that you've built those relationships with yourself. So it's not necessarily a job description that an organization has crafted more generally, and that a number of people will apply for, and that they've actually done something where they've been able to build a connection with somebody and say, I have the opportunity to do this summer project or an internship. Would that be something you'd be interested in? These are the types of skills I would like to be utilizing. Is there a way for us to build synergy here? And so these student-facilitated, self-marketed opportunities are always part of how our students find their own roles. And it tends to be the ones that they potentially can even convert into a full-time opportunity. And it tends to be the ones that have the higher pay range. There may be questions around this at the end. I'll just ever so quickly finish up on a couple more things just to complement this slide. Here are some of the employers. These are pretty typical employers that have hired interns sort of year over year. The City of Vancouver, we know the consulting, the banks are there. Some of the large public organizations outside of the city would be BC Hydro, WorkSafe BC, Fraser Health, Vancouver Coastal Health, and BCLC, which is our lottery corporation. So just wanted to highlight that there's some of those, large, obviously international names, but there's also some very large corporates that are also hiring partners that are more on the sort of public sector side. So, clearly private, but public sector is something to pay attention to as well when you look at our internships. And again, potentially those converting into full-time opportunities. Going into sort of what the full-time opportunity have looked like. So this is, again, sort of fresh off the press, 2023, graduating MBA, full-time MBA data is seen by industry. So where we've seen a bit of a shift is technology took over number one, where in 22 it was consulting, but consulting not far behind. You can see utilities, energy. So I'm going back to some of those organizations I just mentioned, Hydro, Fortis, through the city, financial services, manufacturing, healthcare. We talked about healthcare as being one of those growth opportunities. So that gives you a little bit of a snapshot of the industry, and the function looks like this. So functionally, you can see that it can go in all sorts of different places. If you think of tech consulting, you think of clean tech, you think of sustainability, you think of green consulting, marketing, business development, general management, finance, op-log, logistics, information technology, and you've got human resources reflected there as well. So some of the functional aspects of where people have gone. And then finally, this is our hiring slide with the largest average base salary we've seen, which is over $100,000 Canadian, the median at 98, with a relatively large range from 55,000 to 200,000 in Canadian dollars. This is a reflection of 78% or 76% of the class who reported. So of the class, that 76% reported 3 months after graduation. The footnote, which I can't actually use in terms of statistically, is we do know that number is higher. It was unfortunate students just didn't report the data. So this is who's reported. So again, a bit of a good news story in terms of the salary and the numbers. And the 76%, I would say anecdotally, I can tell you it's probably more like 85%, but they didn't actually fill in the spreadsheet. So we have to give you that number as our official number. So with that, I think I've kind of gone through a lot of information in sort of 30, 35 minutes. So the rest of this time, I think, would probably be better served by asking questions. If there's anything that you're curious about, if it's the application process, to refer to Tina. If there's anything about the slides that I've just shared, I'm happy to field questions now. And with that, I will stop sharing and we can see whose hands are up and who's got questions, and open the floor.
Great presentation. Thanks so much, Mary. We have some questions in the chat box, and if you want to go through, and please make sure that you use the chat box function and also raise your hand function. and we'll go one by one from there. So seeing that there's a hand up, so Chitem Virgil, I'm so sorry. This is if I pronounce this wrong, but please go ahead to ask your question.
Hi, it's Chetan Beer. That's totally fine. It's a difficult name. How are you?
Thank you. Thank you for doing the session.
It was a lovely session. I'm so glad I joined. I could join. It's very late in India, but amazing. Thank you so much for that. I had a very quick question. So, for someone making a segue from an industry like the legal industry in India to probably pursuing management, say at your school or in Canada, I mean, how does that impact, your employability? Because you're technically coming from an industry that does not really have a lot of compatibility on the face of it. Because I see like technology and consulting are the two predominant employers in the data that I saw in the slides. So I don't know if this is too specific to my profile and you can choose not to answer it. But basically my question is, and probably my fear is that coming from the legal industry, which is India specific, jurisdiction specific, how good a decision would it be to pursue a management program at the UBC?
I'm happy to answer that question because I am here to tell you that we see many students in the program year over year with law backgrounds. You have so many transferable skills when you come from a legal background. And when you add that business acumen, the business skills on top of that, I can tell you I've seen those students go to working with accelerators in the startup space. I've seen them work with organizations that are like tech sector. They might actually have gone and worked with organizations that are building technology for law firms. It's really broad. But in any given year, I can tell you that it's not an anomaly to have former lawyers in the program from Mexico, from India, from Turkey last year. I mean, it's a very, I would say, transferable skill profile. And in fact, even in Canada, teachers and lawyers, I think, are the biggest career changers. I think statistically, I read that somewhere. So a lot of people like yourself as lawyers are thinking about, what do I want to do next? And how do I take these skills and how do I build on them? And I would say that, if you're interested in business and you're interested in the curriculum, then trust yourself to know that, there's a journey there for those of you who come from a law background.
That's reassuring. Thank you so much for answering that. Thank you.
I don't know the order here, Tina. I can just call, is it Soria? I don't know if you're next.
I'd be happy to go, Mary.
Okay.
Thank you for calling it out. Hey, first of all, hi, Tina. Hi, Mary. Good to see you after a while. And thank you for such a great presentation. It was extremely insightful. I just had this one question, that there's been this thought that the industries are area specific. So in the British Columbia or the West Coast, you have technically heavy industries, while on the East Coast towards Toronto and other places, you have more of consulting domains. How much do you still think that, the location of the industry still matters in terms of job market when presently everything, it's easy to relocate and most of the things are going virtually on. So do you still think that the industry is getting affected by the concentration of industry in a specific city or town?
I mean, I think our statistics sort of answer that question is if you can work in consulting in any city. I mean, some of the big companies, like if you're thinking about the big consulting names, yes, they have offices in Toronto, but Calgary is a really big office for a lot of those firms. Accenture, Bain, or Boston Consulting, they're based in Calgary. So I wouldn't say that you need to pick the school based on the industry. I would say keep in mind that the tech sector is also across the country. It's Absolutely. Just that in Vancouver, we definitely have, I think, a bit of a name for ourselves in that startup space, the tech space, the accelerator space. And you can be doing your courses here with the lens of working with one of those firms and getting your, some experience, and maybe you move somewhere else afterwards, or maybe you don't. I think a lot of students come with an open mind, and I think that's the best way to come. Come to Vancouver with an open mind, and opportunities may be here that you didn't foresee. As I said, in that SME market, it might be that Toronto does drive you, and that is a better place for you. But we definitely see students not married to any one city, and that the location of the school doesn't necessarily, give you a leg up if you're doing the work, if you're connecting, if you're doing the research, if you're, building your community. You can do that anywhere. It's a global program. It's a global world.
No, absolutely. I think that helps a lot because, sitting aside of Canada, sitting outside of Canada, it can be a little confusing whether the industry is, geographically specific.
Yeah.
But I think you've cleared this question that I had, and I think that helps me a lot. Thank you so much.
I would ask you yourself, when you see the numbers, we're talking about Toronto versus if you're a really big city person and you love a big city, then Vancouver might not be the right city for you. But it's, again, that's more about your lifestyle choices rather than the program choices.
I got you. Thank you so much.
Pranab?
Hey, hi Mary, hi Tina, hi everyone. Thank you so much for this great session. I firstly would like to apologize beforehand. My camera is a little glitchy, so I may not be able to open my camera. But yes, I have two questions actually. The first one is, even though I have like a solid plan of, what I'm going to do once I reach UBC, I still want to, explore a few options. For example, I'm in tech. So within tech itself, I want to see, what are the different things like product management, tech consulting, and things like that. So like, for example, right now I'm in tech consulting, but I just wanted to know how like the BCC Business Careers Center help those who are pivoting. I think it's a little generalized question from what Chetan Veer asked. But yeah, just wanted to know how open is it in UBC for people to be pivoting right within the program? Like, I don't have any plans as such. I want to learn. That's like my first question. Maybe I'll go ahead later with the second one.
I'm going to start this answer, and I might actually just step away for 10 seconds because I think my computer might be running out of gas. But I will tell you that on any given MBA class, I would say, 30 to 50% are people who we would call career changers. There'd be another 30 to 50 might be career enhancers. They like the space they've been in. They just want to build on that and continue. Then there's entrepreneurs, people who really want to start something and actually meet people who are like-minded and work in their own type of business ideas. So I think it's important that you have opportunities to come with an open mind. You might come with the idea that I'm not a career changer. I don't want to pivot, but somewhere along the way, something big changes for you. And you're like, you know what? I think this might be a really interesting angle for me. And so again, it goes back to, we said, working with your career strategists and so on, and working with each other, you get the opportunity to sort of expand and explore. And I think sometimes you don't know what you don't know. And you get here and you go to a session and it opens a whole new path that you just did not even anticipate. And I think that's the best way to come, is thinking that I do have a plan. I'm focused on that plan, but I can also, if something happened and it changed, I'd be okay with that too.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I just wanted to know, if Business Career Center is supportive of that in
100%. Like everybody comes with we meet you where you're at. So we're not prescriptive. We're not telling you what to do. You're telling us what your goals and your ambitions are, and we're there to help support you and walk with you as you take that journey. So, it's not where we're saying, okay, well, 30% of the class has to go this way or 20%. Like, really, it's your journey. And that's why with the Sauder program, you'll see most of our students with a one-off, one person goes here, one person goes here, one person goes here. There's not like 30 people going to one organization.
Okay, so while Mary's getting her plug, is there any questions about the program, any missions? I'm happy to answer that here. And I see some questions in the chat box. I'm trying to answer those, but I think it's more for Mary to answer. For entrepreneurship, I see some people are interested in potentially starting your own company, and that's definitely doable. And we do, as you recall, the program timeline that in the summer, we call the summer experience month. You have a few options. So one's the internship option, and then the entrepreneurial project, and then the industry project. So those ones really give you opportunity to work on different things, then potentially getting a position in those companies Mary talked about. Here, who's Mary's back. Mary was just trying to answer some questions in the chat box about entrepreneurship, and some people are interested in start their company, and also trying to understand how BCC can support when they want to pursue entrepreneurship. So
we run, so in some of our career programming, one of the things we do is we introduce you to what we call E at UBC, entrepreneurship at E at UBC. We do a tour to their location. We walk through their accelerator space or their maker space. We have one of the things that's, I think, quite unique to Sauder is CDL, the Creative Destruction Lab, which is, again, all sort of usually firms that are, well, they're startup, but they've had some seed funding. And so being able to work with those players and volunteer with those players. There's a lot there that's really here within the system. So a career center is a career, no matter where you're thinking about going, whether it's about being an employee or whether it's about running your own business. And in any given year, there's a number of students who might be intrapreneurial, where they have ambitions to be an entrepreneur. But in the short term, they're going to work with the organization to learn more about sort of the Canadian market. And then they're going to take that experience, and maybe it's 2 to 3 years from now. And actually, at that point, they'll have more capital and they'll have more wherewithal to really start their own business. Some have been able to start the business within the program. So they've actually used their summer to work with a couple of classmates and actually work on kicking it off and getting a business plan together and crafting it and putting together pitch decks and so on. One of the courses that you do in the program, if you so choose and you're entrepreneurially minded, is Tech E. And that program will take you sort of through the steps of what you need to do. And so I think that's a really great course to take, and it extends over 2 periods. And so some students have used the 2 periods plus the summer window, that summer experience window, to work on their business. So there's definitely opportunities there to do that. And our job is to make sure that you're getting access to that and seeing what that ecosystem looks like.
Thanks, Mary. Just before we head back to Pranab and then Himanshu, I know because this is a lot of questions come to me during the advising sessions. I know Mary has a hard stop at 11, so we'll try to get the questions as much as we can. Basically, Mary, you mentioned about the support from BCC to the MBA students, and you talk about potentially you can provide more information about the employers, access to employers and connections. So some of the events happening, what about the timelines of those events? You talk about for the employers roundtable or the alumni networking event, and also for that, people can anticipating what can happen during their journey at UBC.
So we're running programming throughout the year. 16 months goes very quickly. So I mentioned when I was showing you the slide with all the company recruiting sessions that they start in the autumn. They generally run through September, October. Few in November, then they kind of launch, I would say, come January, February, not February, because February is GIE when students are traveling. And then you find that we will have maybe a couple in March, but it's more around you building your own community. So what are some of the places, the associations that I could be going to and tapping into to help me learn and understand the market? So yes, there are things coming here and that are being organized through Sauder, but it's also our goal is to teach you career management for life. So that means, where are those places that you want to be looking at? What are some of the areas that are happening in the market? So that's always a compliment to being able to, work with your career manager, your career strategist on putting together your plan. But it's like, now, what are those areas that you need to be digging in on to find out what is sort of your best next steps? So,
Thanks, Meg.
Jillian, I don't know if you've had a chance to ask your question when I stepped away.
No, I haven't, but I believe
Go
there
ahead.
was one other person ahead of me if we're going in order, or I'm happy to go as well.
Go quick. So,
Okay, sure.
you've got
I
10
have
minutes.
I have two questions. One's quick. So I was just wondering, is each student assigned a dedicated career strategist that's consistent?
So we have two people, well, I guess more, three people that work with students with your career journey. And there's an intake process that you fill in a form with your interest areas, the types of things you're thinking about. And again, that might shift, which is why when you said, is there one designated person?
Yeah.
So based on that intake, we would assign you to somebody. But if that morphs somewhere along the way and you want to chat to somebody else, there's no hard lines that you stay in one lane. That we would definitely open the gate to you chatting to somebody else. So, but you for sure have one person that you're aligned with, and that you drive that relationship. You're the one that, after you've done the intake, will follow up, we'll make appointments, we'll liaise with them, we'll get their feedback, but ultimately you drive it.
Okay, great. And then my other question was, how does the Career Center leverage alumni connections to support students who are looking for internships or post-MBA roles?
Yeah, so I mean, the world, like I said earlier, we're living in a global world and we're in a technical world. So clearly we've, got people that are our alumni. We have alumni panels. We bring alumni into opening week. We bring alumni into all sorts of different places. We have events where alumni come and get to see each other, as well as get to meet the new cohorts. But ultimately, the LinkedIn is your alumni portal. That is your easiest way to basically search people and find people that might be Sauder alumni that are in a market that you're interested in, or in an industry or a company that you're interested in. And however you craft that message to them, and again, this is where we help you with that, is where you're going to get the uptake, right? So if you're talking to alumni, you're reaching out to alumni as an explorer, as somebody who's curious, as somebody who's obviously polished and professional, it's very likely they'll get back to you. If you're asking about a job, you'll never hear from them again. So, it's just knowing how to use the alumni network in a way that's, I guess, going to get your most bang for your buck.
Right. Perfect. Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Himanshu?
Yeah, hi Mary, hi Tina. This is Himanshu. Actually, I've accepted an offer for admission and I'll be an upcoming student next year. So really excited to meet you in person as well. And related to the slides, I was just going through, and I'm leaning more towards the technology and analytics leadership track. So I see most of the people go into the technology space, and I'm unsure between technology consulting or product management. So do we see people mostly go into these spaces, or there are many opportunities in business analytics and other things as well?
You know what?
It's
a very individual question, because it's very much, I think, based on what your background is. So we'll have a lot of people who have a technical background. They've been electrical engineers. They've worked in that space. And then they come to the program and they take courses not aligned in the technical space because they feel like they've already got that sort of experience. And they take maybe they do custom because they take a few supply chain management, or maybe one of the courses in operations, and they take a course in strategy, and they take a course somewhere else. So those questions around tracks really come up more on a one-on-one basis. I always say, pick what you want and where you feel like it's going to enhance your profile versus doing the same thing again. And I would say there's, when you're in the program, there's we bring in panels of alumni panels to talk about the different tracks. Not so much the tracks as much as like what their experience was in the types of courses they did and where did it lead. And then faculty do a session as well, and they really give you a very detailed pitch on why doing a certain track makes sense. But at the end of the day, it's ultimately your choice. And you might go down the path of going, I'm sticking with finance. I'm going to do finance. This is new for me. I don't know a lot about finance. I want to take those courses. But somewhere along the way, you may not finish the track. So you end up in custom. Not the end of the world, because what you would be marketing when you think about your marketing material is, I leaned in on the finance. That was an area for me to develop. You know, what was your favorite course? I took this course because I knew I was going to be able to build out those skills. So I would say that there's not one size fits all. There's not one track that's more popular than every year. It kind of varies. It really is. There's not one space that I would say people are picking one track because it leads to industry. It doesn't work that way.
Right. I got it. I think I'll get to know more when I join the course, and I'm really excited to meet you all in person as well. Thank you so much.
Great.
Welcome, Himanshu. Mary, we have another hand up in Pranab, and you asked the question before, and sorry, I know you have been waiting for a while, and if you can ask your question, I do have the last final question about ICMP. If Mary can just touch on a little bit about the ICMP, which is, I know I got a lot of questions about that, especially your interest in the consulting project or industry. Just after Pranab's question, Mary, you can just quickly give some information about ICMP. I can put the link in as well. Thank you.
I'll start with that, Tina, and then I'll come back to Pranab. SCMP is the Strategy Consulting Management Program. It is not run by us. It is not a Sauder program. It is not a BCC program. It is alumni who went from Sauder into consulting roles, and primarily large consulting players, and they will post information on their website. So again, none of it will be on Sauder's material in terms of their, you won't see it on the Career Center because they run it very separate. And they'll have application dates, and they'll tell you what they're looking for, and they will run boot camps. Basically, they run weekends, usually in the summer, for people who are admitted. There is a large fee, and the fee covers the costs of their facilitators to come and teach the program. And then if you are successful, the program will teach you the basics. And then at the end, you do a mock interview. And if that mock interview, you're successful through that, it potentially unlocks first round interviews with some consulting organizations. They'll never tell you who those organizations are in advance. It changes from year to year. It's, from some years, there's only 2 companies that are interested in hiring. In other years, there's 6. It really depends on the market. So I don't have a lot of information as to what they will do, honestly. But I can tell you that they look at your GMAT or GRE. They look at your background. Do you have a master's or a PhD or other degrees that might be of interest? Because ultimately they like the diverse profile of people that are going into consulting. So that's SCMP. As I said, we have absolutely no influence. They run it independently. So if you're interested, you just need to be on their website to understand their deadlines and their requirements. Pranab.
Thank you. Just a very quick question. So I saw the stats about the internship. I understand the internship goes around for like the entire summer, I think 4 or 5 months. So just wanted to understand whether students actually go for the entire period of 4 or 5 months, or what is the average time period for like a summer internship?
Good question. I should have mentioned that. It's you only have to do 8 weeks full time, like 320 hours, to a maximum of about 16 weeks, which is around 4 months. Really depends on the calendar year, to be honest. But if you think about May, June, July, August, so 4 months roughly is the maximum time. Some employers don't have the budget or a project deep enough to hire you for the whole 4 months. They might want you for 3 months. You might have plans on traveling or going away or whatever. So you may end up, only wanting to do a 2 month or a 3 month internship, or it might not actually show up until later in the cycle, so that there's only 2 months left or 3 months left in the summer when you actually get that job. So long as you're meeting the criteria of a minimum of 8 weeks full time, it's with one employer. You don't get to work with different employers on a part-time basis. It's one full-time employer for at least 8 weeks to a maximum, as I said, of around 16. And I think most students probably do anywhere from like 12 to 14 to 16 weeks. It's usually in that 3 to 4 month window, which would be the average.
Okay, thank you so much. One final question. Would we be getting a PDF of the report that you shared?
I don't know if they're sharing these slides or not, but I will leave that to Tina. You can follow up with the admissions team.
Yes, we can definitely follow up with you, Prunat.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, thank you. So it's at 11 o'clock, and thanks so much, Mary, for this informative session. I think a lot of insights, a lot of data are shared to our attendees today. Now, again, I put our contact information in the chat box, so feel free to connect with us. And good luck with your applications if you're in the process. If you haven't started, please connect with us. And thank you again to all the attendees today, and have a great weekend ahead.